I thought I'd just give an overview sort of what we do in master facilities planning and specifically what some of the projects we're working on right now, including an administration building, which I think is the one of most concern for you guys. So I will just try to share screen and get started, but it's interact anytime, interrupt me, ask questions, whatever. So.
All right, thank you.
You bet. So let me know when you guys can see my screen.
We have it.
Okay. Now, do you see 2 slides or just 1 slide?
We see 2.
Okay. I wonder if I change one little setting here, if you can just see 1.
There we go.
You see 1 full screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. I am going to just go through this then. So first, I just want to give you a little bit of background, kind of a history here of how the county goes about deciding which projects to do. And we have a transformation board, it's called, and it really only looks more about 2 years out, like this year and next year kind of thing, on what are the most important projects we're working on, and how do we prioritize those? Which ones should we do first? Which ones can we afford in our budget and things like that? So it's a cross representation of the elected officials and all the department heads in the county. And we look at the pros and cons and how urgent the need is and what's the ramifications if we don't do this project and all that kind of stuff. And then we come up with a priority list. That helps with our capital projects, our CIP, and our exceptional operating expenses, EOE. What it doesn't do, though, is look long-term, like what are we trying to do over the next 10 or 20 years? And what are those big projects and what are those priorities? The Transformation Board doesn't do that. So what the county embarked on was in 2017, the commissioners commissioned a master facilities plan. So it's kind of what are the total needs of all the different buildings for all the departments and elected officials going out 20 years. And it took about a year for this committee to complete their analysis and come up with a list of what the priorities were. And that's what we call our master facilities plan. And the funding mechanisms of how we were going to pay for all this were not identified in the master facilities plan. It was just, here's what we need, not really how we're going to go do it, but here's what we need. So we have to kind of decide how we're going to go do these things now. But we have a decent list of what we're supposed to try to tackle. And we have engaged with some professional consultants in real estate, architecture, and financing to help us with some of these decisions. So it's not just the county coming up with these ideas. We've got some other industry professionals helping us out as well. So the overview of what the master facilities plan said, as I mentioned, it was a comprehensive study and there were 16 members of different departments, elected officials, and a few individuals just from the community as well to help us come up with this. And it identified about 10 top priorities. And the total need that was originally identified was about $270 million. We feel that a more recent update on that is probably more like 317. We're finding out that these costs basically captured the building needs itself. It didn't really capture the land, all the things that would go into the building from equipment and furniture, things like that. Didn't capture engineering and architect fees and things like that. It was kind of just these departments need this amount of space, so a building would cost that amount. But the total cost is really more than that when you look at land and development and design and furniture and everything else. So we're in the process of upgrading the costing of this master facilities list with all of those included, so we have a more realistic number. We're probably a month or two out from having that completed, but we're estimating that this total thing's probably closer to $500 to $600 million for all these projects. This is one sheet that, again, with the old costing on it, probably not accurate, but at least you see the listing of what the top priorities are out of this master's facilities plan. And you'll see that the top three are the public safety building. Pod E is in addition to the Ada County Jail, and that's underway now. And the second item is the item that's kind of most interest today, which is an administration building and parking for those individuals that would go into an administration building. The third item on the list was the coroner's office. The coroner has totally outgrown their office and unfortunately literally are stacking bodies on top of each other here. So they're in urgent need of new facility. So those are our three top priorities. And I won't go through all this, but we presented this slide to show why do we even need an admin building? And the reason is that 20 years ago, this courthouse in downtown Boise was built mainly for the courts and the judges and judges' chambers and the clerks of the court, some prosecuting attorneys, some public defenders, some of the areas that all support the courts. And it was intended to accommodate those needs for at least 20 years. Well, since it was built with a lot of growth in mind, initially all those court functions did not take up the entire building. So we have a lot of other departments in with the courts here, and I'll go through a list of those in a minute. Well, between the courts growing and all those other departments growing, we have outgrown this building. And these were just a few slides that I showed during our budget process to show the commissioners that we have outgrown this building. And basically what you're seeing is rooms that used to be copy rooms, used to be a closet, and we're turning them into offices and cramming a couple people in them and stuff like that because we have totally outgrown this courthouse. The courts, as an example, have 27 functioning courtrooms right now. They're asking for 34 courtrooms immediately and more in the future. And more judges are being hired and all that. So the need for the courts is they really need this whole building. And to accommodate that, all the other support functions that don't need to be near the courts need to all go find another home. And that's what defines the need for the administration building. So these are the departments that, just so you know, that go into an administration building. So human resources and procurement, the Ada County Assessor's Office, the Board of County Commissioners, the Auditor and Recorder Indigent Services of the Clerks Department. Now there's another group of clerks called Clerk of the Court, and it's a bunch of clerks that support the courts. They would stay in the courthouse. Development Services, they do a lot of the development work in unincorporated Ada County. Our IT, Information Technology Department, the Operations Administration, so that's the group that I run, but we have operations staff in each of the buildings to do the maintenance and the facilities work and the grounds upkeep and stuff. But we also have sort of an administration staff over operations, and they're in the courthouse. They would go to an admin building. The public defender and the treasurer would also go there. So you can see all of these departments listed here. These services are in the courthouse currently. They need to move out into an admin building so that the courts can expand into the courthouse. So one of the questions that I got kind of as a precursor to this update, a few questions that might be good for you guys to know, was status of kind of the major buildings. I just put a one-pager together just to kind of let you know what our major buildings are and if they're in dire need of upgrade or they recently were upgraded or, you know, kind of where we're at. So the public safety building is over on Barrister, and that is where the Ada County Jail is and the Ada County Sheriff is all in that building, but it's called the PSB, or Public Safety Building. And it's very old, probably 50 years old. I think it was built around 1970 or so. So it's been added on to and pieced together. But there's been so much investment in that location. I think we'll just keep adding on as long as we can in that location, which is probably another 20 years. We can add a couple more jail pods. We can move out into the parking lot and expand onto some buildings, things like that. So we've got a little more life in that building. We're undergoing an addition, the Pod E expansion to the jail is underway right now. But that the whole facility and that location will stay there probably another 20 years. Then all of that will have to be relocated somewhere, maybe in South Ada County, out in the desert towards the penitentiary or something, but a big location for all the jail and stuff. But that's down the road a ways. We have a 911 dispatch center, which is a pretty busy building for all the EMS, the emergency medical services stuff for our paramedics and all that happens. It's a fairly new building. It's only a few years old and it's in great shape, and it will stay in that location for many, many years. So we don't have anything to do there. The courthouse, will have a project in the courthouse once all these other groups move out to an admin building. The courthouse will need to be renovated a little bit with some tenant improvements so it can accommodate the right courtrooms and the right staff and everything for the courts. So we'll have a little bit of an upgrade there. The EMS buildings are paramedics. We have about 8 of them, I believe, and they're kind of spaced throughout the county. And they're in the right locations, and they're kind of sized the right way, and they're pretty new and in decent shape. So we wouldn't change that model at all. They would stay where they're at. The coroner's building is old and out of space, and that is on the docket right now as one of our top 3 projects. We have the jail, the coroner's building, and the administration building. Weed and Pest is a brand new building in great shape. So nothing we need to do there. Parks and Waterways is in pretty good shape with their facilities. The driver's license and DMV always needs a little more space to prevent the long lines and waiting that we all do when we go there. And we've added a few other locations. There's another location that just went in for DMV, and a driver's license one that's over in Meridian that we're just looking at bringing back online. So everything's okay there, but those won't be anything at Expo Idaho or anything like that for these functions. Juvenile detention, that's over behind where West Junior High used to be, near St. Alphonsus Hospital, and they are busting at the seams. But we have a parking lot that we can build a parking garage on, and then that juvenile detention can grow into the current parking lot. So we've got some expansion needs, and they're taken care of in the current footprint at the current site. So nothing too major going on with that group as far as they won't be moving or anything like that. And Expo Idaho, you guys probably know more about that than I do. So I just put a lot going on.
There is.
Yeah. So just as I mentioned, the top 3 items now on our list, the coroner's office is going to go in just east of RC Willie. There's a little industrial plot right there. I think there's DeMeyer Furniture or something right there, but we're right next to that. That's where it's going to go in. We have the land, but the building, we're just doing the design and planning stages of that right now. But been approved in the budget, and it's been kind of scoped out what we need, and the land's acquired. So we're ready to do a major expansion with the corner. Jail expansion, similar. It's been approved in the budget. It's going to be a $45 million expansion, and it's going to be just attached to the current jail building there off of Barrister Street. The administration building, just some of the parameters around that is, it's the requirement's going to be about a 250,000 square foot building. Probably about, and this is again planning for 20 years into the future. So the commissioners may decide to do this in phases and do it in pieces, but this is sort of the need looking out 20 years. So they may decide They only want to do 170,000 square foot right now, and 400 or 500 parking spaces, but have the space and the room and the land to add on to it wherever we decide to go, so that we can get to these numbers. But ultimately, it's about a 250,000 square foot need, about 750 parking spots, and of course, it depends on if you're making a 1-story building or a 10-story building, how much space you need. But it's probably going to be about a 4-story building. And we think when you put that together, the square footage of the building and all the parking and all that is probably about a 5-acre need that we're looking at. Other projects, just FYI, in the next 5 years, is the juvenile detention needs to expand. Bases is a support center for domestic and sexual violence. It's down here, not too far from the courthouse, between here and like Capitol Boulevard. And there's a desire to have that move to a newer facility, a little bigger facility, possibly closer to a hospital for some of the care needs and things like that. So in the next 5 years, sometime, there'll be more discussions about finding a new home for faces. It is not, though, by the way, there really haven't been discussions about that new home being Expo, Idaho. We're thinking of other spots for that. The Ada County Sheriff's offices and field service upgrades, this courthouse renovation, of course, and then the sheriff's office again, jail administration, booking and kitchen, and some of those things. So those are the projects coming up. But really, as far as Expo Idaho, what we would be looking for there is really just the possibility of the admin building. These other expansions and buildings are not, we're not looking at Expo Idaho at this time. Not to say that couldn't change, because I mean it is a large space out there, and it's land that county owns. So we need to take a look at it. But right now, when you start looking at the needs and the space and the location that's best for these buildings and where they're located currently, really at this time for Expo Idaho, we're just considering the possibility of the admin building, if that all worked into the scheme. So the admin building kind of criteria and locations, the possible locations. The criteria is, of course, we want adequate space for all the departments to grow. We need sufficient parking. That's getting tighter and tighter down here in what we call the courthouse corridor, which is the few blocks around the courthouse down here. We have some parking lots. They're mostly full. We have been contracting with other parking garages a few blocks away to get more spots. But if we expanded down here with an administration building on one of the parking lots, that would A, require more parking, and B, just took up some of our existing parking to put the building in. So we would need probably a parking garage along with the admin building if we did it downtown near the current courthouse. So sufficient parking is a huge criteria. Access to public transportation is important. We're trying to encourage people to ride share and to carpool and ride their bikes and things like that. And the current courthouse is not as central to our employees' location of where they live and where they commute from than it used to be. We've done heat maps of where all the employees from all those departments that I had listed that would go into an admin building and where they currently live in Ada County. And every year we look at that, the kind of hot spot for sort of the central location for that is moving further and further west. And one of the criteria is to at least consider for an admin building is to be a little more centrally located in Ada County and more accessible to the commute from where our employees live. And as the years have progressed, the current location of the courthouse fits that need less and less because the concentration is going to the west. Affordability, obviously, if we can build on land that the county already owns and there's sufficient parking to where we don't have to build a parking garage, that possible option would be attractive to the commissioners and ultimately to the citizens of Ada County, because it would be a less expensive option to do versus trying to build downtown, build both an admin building and a parking garage is what we would have to do downtown. So locations that have been kind of considered, Expo, Idaho is one that, given that there's, at least for the time being, there's some space out there, and the fact that the county owns it, and the fact that it's more centrally located in Ada County than the current courthouse is, it's an area that we I think have a responsibility to at least consider as a possible location for an admin building. The courthouse corridor down here hasn't been ruled out. I mean, there are parking lots and land around here, and there are some advantages to having everybody together in a campus, but there are challenges with the cost of doing it down here and the parking and things like that. The idea is just further west in Boise, someplace, maybe not Expo, Idaho, but maybe another location that's central to Ada County and closer to where our employees live. And that kind of to be determined what any potential sites that fit that bill might be, but it's just an option to be considered. One of the questions I got in an email that possibly answer, and as I've been verbalizing some of these pros and cons of these locations, some of this has come out already, but what works downtown is most of the departments together, and there's a lot of communication and collaboration. People are close to the commissioners, and they're close to each other on departments that work together and interact. So just all being together is kind of a positive. It's close for people that want to go out for lunch or go somewhere right after work or something, run errands or go eat places and things like that. It's a nice location for that type of stuff. There's some proximity to state and city government, which people consider nice. We do some interaction with Boise City Hall, which is not far away from the courthouse. Our teams go to the legislature a lot to look at the state government and what they're doing for certain laws and how it affects us, and certain appropriations for our funding and various things like that. So a lot of our team goes to the Capitol building and to the legislature frequently. So being close to those locations has been kind of nice. Things that don't really work well being downtown are the parking is a challenge down here. It's expensive. We never have enough of it. And if we expand down here with an admin building, we need even more parking. So that's a challenge. As I mentioned, it's not that central of a location down here anymore to where our employees live in the county. And it's expensive property. If you look at the opportunity cost of building on land that we have down in this courthouse corridor versus possibly selling that or having others develop that, it's expensive land for us to use for an admin building when it's not essential that an admin building be down here. We could build on other land that's less expensive. So that's one of the drawbacks of building down here is we're using pretty expensive land to do an admin building or a parking structure. I think that was my last slide. Yeah. So are those kind of, did I hit upon some of the stuff you wanted to hear? And do you have questions or any other things that you wanted to know? That was kind of what I thought you were hoping to see. So that's what I put together. But if you have other questions and that didn't fit the bill, please fire away.
No, that was great, Jess. Thank you for that. It gave us a lot of the background information of where you've been and where you're going.
Okay.
I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
You probably know that Garden City also has their eye on the Expo Idaho property a little bit for some of their administrative functions. And I'm wondering, has there been any thought or discussion of combining admin buildings there, or is that?
I think that Ada County would be open to discussions like that. I don't believe those discussions have happened yet.
Okay.
But I think that the county would be open to that. I know that, but I don't I know that there was some consideration over the last year of possibly co-locating some Ada County government uh, services like this admin building we're talking about with other city governments within Ada County. And there was some brief discussion about could we do something with the city of Meridian because they were going to do something with their big new building, or and something with the city of Cuna possibly. And the commissioners decided for whatever reason, I don't know if it was because they thought Meridian and Cuna were too far away for a lot of people, but they decided it was probably not in our best interest to do some co-location with Meridian and Cuna on something. But uh, I don't think that necessarily means that they would not be interested in doing something with Garden City, just because it's, Garden City, as you say, the proximity of Garden City and their desire for Expo Idaho property, and similarly Ada County having owning that property there and having it be so central to our county, what we're doing, and where our employees live. I think there might be a better fit there than there ever was with Meridian or Cuna. So I would think the county be open to considering things like that. Um, I think
Okay.
I think the county be open to other things too. If a Garden City, I've heard that maybe Garden City is interested in more of a downtown area because they don't really have a downtown. And if they made
Right.
like where the racetrack was or something, if that's one of the considerations you guys are looking at, if over in that area was a Garden City downtown, say, it's possible that there could be something that's a combination parking garage and admin structures that accommodate both Ada County and Garden City. It's also possible if, and I know this is just yet one of the many variables you guys juggle, but if the variable uh, of a new Boise Hawks stadium going someplace other than where it currently is, if any uh, possibility that that stadium was incorporated in some other development over where the racetrack is or closer to the river or whatever, if the space was vacated where the current stadium is, that's also a possible location for an admin building. It's kind of on the corner of the property, wouldn't really disrupt other development that is going on at the racetrack, or wouldn't wouldn't really cut into what Bob Batista wants to do at the fairgrounds if we're keeping the fair there. Things like that. It's just more off to the side. So that's also a possibility.
Okay.
But I think the county's open to any kind of discussions and options that we'd like to be just involved in the discussions when it comes to that. Let you guys know what our interest was and what our requirements would be if we went there. But yeah, we'd be open to any discussion. If Garden City wanted to sit down and throw around ideas, Ada County would be open to having those discussions.
Okay. Great. Thank you. I
Yeah.
just have one other question, and that has to do with parking, because I do understand the parking issues downtown. I wondered if has there been any study, I guess, if you will, as to how many vehicles are parking downtown currently for use of the courthouse as opposed to the use of the admin building?
That's underway right now. I asked the same question a few weeks back, and folks are working on that. I don't have a definitive answer, but I can certainly share that with you as soon as I get it. But
Oh,
because yeah, we're gonna. On one hand, if we moved away, we're reducing the need for parking for the admin folks here. But then as the courthouse grows out, they're going to increase their need. And at what rate do you either have net parking or you don't have any parking left, kind of thing? And what's that look like? And we're trying to go through that right now.
okay.
So Jess, this is
Yes.
Brianna, Development Services. Kind of piggybacking on that, Andrea. I know that our department has been looking at, from a transportation and land use perspective, the effects of COVID on how often people are coming in, how much they're using
Right.
parking.
Right.
So I wanted to ask Jess if there's been any conversations of any of those needs changing if things continue to be virtual, both with the courts and with administration offices. If there's a less of a need for that courthouse space or for the admin departments.
That's a great question, Brianna. And the short answer is there have been some initial discussions about that, saying we need to consider that, what COVID has done to the work environment and the possibility of more people working from home and less people coming in and parking. But we don't have definitive answers to say, we think that going forward, 20% of people are going to work from home, and that means this for parking. We haven't put that definitive of answers around it, but it has been discussed. I know the commissioners a couple weeks ago in a meeting said maybe the administration building, instead of building it all at once, we do it in phases, because maybe we don't know the timeline for the build out of filling that up as well as we used to because of COVID, and it might have more people working from home, and it may take longer to fill up that building. Or maybe even our future needs is a little smaller. Maybe it's not 250,000, it's 200 or 180 because of COVID and people working remotely and things like that. So those thoughts have come into our discussions in recent weeks about we have to look at that. We don't really know, analyze, we don't know the answer necessarily, but I know the courts, I talked to the courts, and they feel pretty strongly that most of the court functions still have to be done in the courthouse and in person. There are some court proceedings and misdemeanors that it might just be traffic violations or some pretty minor things. They can actually hold what's called a virtual court, and they have people online, the defendants, and they have the judge and all that, and they do some kind of a virtual court. But when I asked them if they're going to be doing more of that, and if that changed their plans for how to build out this courthouse physically with a renovation, and they said no, that there might be a little bit of that, but they didn't see it really displacing the need for what they needed to do here. That the growth in all of their court cases that they have, and the number of judges and the number of courtrooms they need for many of the higher level infractions, I don't know if it's a statute or requirement or just a very strong preference by the judges, but they want to be present and they want everybody to physically be in their midst. So the courts felt like COVID's not going to change their requirements going forward much at all, because they feel the court proceedings still have to be in person for the most part. They are trying to find some little small infraction things that they can do online, but they didn't think that was much. So, but the other stuff, yeah. Does it reduce the need for the admin building size or the number of parking, or at least the number of years we think it'll take to fill up an admin building and all that? Yeah, COVID probably has some influence on that. Our ability to learn how to work remotely pretty effectively, actually, during COVID, it may change our parameters a little bit. We just don't know exactly to what yet, but but we're discussing that.
Sure. Ed, did you have questions?
I didn't. Jess, your presentation was great, and the questions that Andrea and Brianna asked were some of the ones I had too. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. But I imagine that many of our task force members would like the opportunity to ask a question, I'm sure, at some point down the line. But thank you so much for your time. Yeah,
that's great. If you ever have other questions you want to just fire off to me and I answer in email, or do another little chat like this. If you at some point want to have me talk to a broader audience of your team, that's fine as well. Whatever you guys want there. But I had one question for you guys, and sorry if I interrupted you, Brianna. Was just, I know that your committee was meeting and fielding many different ideas and thoughts and options of things. And then I think COVID probably slowed you guys down to where you didn't have as many regular meetings as you thought.
Right.
Maybe you even discontinued them for a while or started to do them remotely or whatever. But what is sort of the new timeline for coming forward to the commissioners, at least with, here's some of the options that seem viable or at least worth considering. And that, you know, kind of boiling down all of your stuff to at least something manageable to look at and consider. What's the timeline for that?
I think right now we're hoping that we might have some recommended scenarios or proposed scenarios available for the public review sometime in November. Is that correct, Brianna? Yeah, but then we'll start the second phase of the project, which is having the public look at and review those scenarios and provide their comments.
Okay.
And my guess, Jess, is that phase 2 will probably be about 6 months.
Okay. Okay.
So we're probably looking
Great.
at about 9 months before we come to the commissioners with, here's what the public wants, and
Yeah. Here's what
ready
we
to
think
make
we
some
should do.
decisions.
Okay. And is the initial kind of the phase 1 just coming to the commissioners with some scenarios? Is that likely to be 5 or 6 scenarios, or what do you think? Are you looking at 2 or 3 or 10? You know, what's the scenario breadth, I guess?
I don't think we've gotten that far yet.
Okay.
I mean, we're just talking still in very general and broad terms. So we have 3 kind of general, broad areas that we're looking at right now, and that could very well be expanded. So
Right. Okay. And then you have other fun stuff going on, like developers throwing out their proposals out there to the public. And I had so many people ask me after that, oh, is this what that committee vetted and looked at and they decided on? I was like, no, that's probably one of many different options. But
we've had the same questions, and
yeah, I bet.
it's been an interesting time.
I bet you have.
We're working on it, but
Yeah.
again, I want to thank you for your time today and appreciate your help. And we may be back in touch.
Okay. Sounds great. Well, nice meeting you guys virtually, and look forward to the discussions. I appreciate it.
Hey, Jess, just real quick before we go, something I thought of that I'm guessing committee members will kind of want to know or ask about.
Yeah.
You've mentioned a couple of times that in the master facilities plan, you have the estimated building costs,
Right.
but then there's additional land acquisition and all of those kinds of things. I know it's hard to kind of pinpoint, but if you could give us kind of a broad idea of how much money we would save if we didn't have to purchase land for a 5-acre plot for an admin building, maybe using the corners. I don't know how big the corners
I
land
think
was.
I can get, yeah, I could get that by, as I mentioned on one of the earlier slides, we have some professionals helping us, some consultants, and we have a real estate consultant from Colliers that helps us with some of this stuff. So I could definitely have him. He could tell us what a 5-acre plot would cost. So what are we saving if we went out to Expo, Idaho and got a 5 acres?
Yeah.
I can get that to you guys. I'll email it out to you.
Okay.
Great. Good
Yeah,
question.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
And Kelly, I'm wondering too, once we put Jess's information out there, if it would be helpful to the committee for us to create some kind of demographics information that kind of shows, because I know like with the courts, it's hard because a lot of people think of Ada County services as just being unincorporated, but there are things like the courts that service all of Ada County. And so maybe we can kind of explain, as Ada County grows, even though things are being annexed into the cities, there are some services of ours that are going to continue growing as the county grows. And so maybe giving some growth information and explaining what services are affected by that growth and how those facilities are those needs are going to keep increasing, not necessarily decreasing as unincorporated annexes into the cities.
Right.
Good idea.
Good.
Just another thing too that just for your information is about a month ago, the commissioners asked me to work with our human resource group and put together a little survey that would go to the employees that work at Ada County in the departments that would go into an admin building. And we worked on a survey, and it's kind of like you know, your preference of where do you live and how far is your commute? And what do you like and not like about the current courthouse location? If there were other locations where, for an admin building, where would you prefer they be? And I think there was 3 choices or something like Expo Idaho, West Boise, or current courthouse expansion, things like that. But anyway, we put together this survey, and right like a day before we were ready to send it out, the commissioner said, let's hold off on that and not send that out right now. There's so many moving parts with, you know, your advisory committee, with other things going on. Let's just wait. But I'm just wondering if we get to the point where we discuss more with you guys the possibilities that might exist out. Maybe this is phase 2 after you guys present some scenarios, and if they narrow the field on those scenarios, and one of those scenarios is possibly us doing an admin building at Expo Idaho, as you consider whichever other development the county wants at the rest of the space. But if it starts coming down to that, maybe in that future time, in that phase 2 or whatever, we're looking at it more closely, maybe we launch that survey again to get, because the commissioner said at some point they did want to get not only the community's feedback on where they want things and what they want, you know, for services and location and all that, but the employees, to have the employees have an input into that. They just they put a hold on it right now, but I think at some point it'd still probably be a good thing to do. We'll just do it at the right timing when we're at that point in the process. Okay, well, I didn't have anything else, but I'll get you that cost on 5 acres. Let me make a note, my action item here.
Thank you so much, Jess.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Later.
Okay. Bye-bye.